EDU-ARCTIC 2, Polar Research for Education, innovative program in Poland and Norway. Webinars.
Originally, it's a part of an educational toolkit prepared by Dr. Jerzy Kiszejewski. And this is an English version, a little modified English version of the toolkit. So I hope you enjoy today's seminar. And like all other webinars, it's a part of, it can serve as an introductory or as a wrap-up for educational toolkit that we prepared with lots of different and very interesting, I believe, materials for students to work either in the classroom or on their own. So today we're going to talk about maritime transport in the Arctic. And let's start with what people used to believe about what's up there. Up there meaning far north, assuming that they already assumed or would have assumed that the Earth was round. So, well, for a very long time, it was completely unknown what's up there in the north. I mean, as late as in the second half of the 19th century, the image of the interior of the Arctic was actually mostly a product of fantasy or imagination and not actual exploration or research. So for some people, like for example, for Mercator, beyond the ice boundary, which the sailors did see trying to sail north encountered, there were 4 continents up there, separated by straits, leading to a warm sea, which was supposed to be stretching around the pole. And there was also another vision, another map, more realistic, so-called Petermann's map, which was more correctly depicting the already known coastlines of the continents surrounding the Arctic Ocean, the Polar Ocean. So the idea was the ocean was divided by a continent or an archipelago of islands, which would be the extension of Greenland. And there would be also a patch of land visible behind the ice barrier, north of the Bering Strait. So Petermann, the author of this map, he also assumed that the interior of the Arctic Ocean was actually free of ice, therefore available for transport, for travel, for exploration. And even though to this day it's really problematic to access it, at least for many types of vessels, and at least with current climate conditions in the region. Since the beginning of time, as usual, people were trying to reach and explore the area. So the Arctic Ocean, also the adjacent seas, have been used by sailors, by travelers, by explorers, like I said, since time immemorial. So it was mainly used by indigenous people, indigenous original explorers, but also there were expeditions and explorations trying to expand use of the global transport, maritime transport routes. And like I said, the first Arctic explorers were the indigenous people, so therefore most of their journeys remain undocumented. But they have been traveling and exploring Arctic waters for thousands of years in search of food, in search of supplies, and also in search of settlement areas. So they remain the original founders of But there were also other explorers, not only indigenous people, like Greek astronomer who sailed northward to Iceland 325 before Christ, so quite a long time ago. Also, of course, the Vikings, the famous explorers, the Vikings of Scandinavia sailed northward and colonized Iceland, and also afterwards they briefly, maybe not briefly, for a couple of centuries, they colonized at least parts of Greenland. So there were also Russian settlers, traders, people were reaching further and further, looking for more convenient and safer and cheaper routes that would be available. And the first person known to propose the existence of so-called Northwest Passage that we're going to discuss was John Cabot, and it was at the end of 15th century, so also quite a long time ago. And like I said, to this day, it's not fully available. So it was quite bold of those explorers to assume that there was a route that they could use for traveling, for exploring, for maybe for settlement, or mostly trade. There were many exploration expeditions. Some of them were successful, some of them were a total catastrophe, but each one of them led to some sort of new discovery. So we now talk about three possible routes through the Arctic Ocean, and each one of them has some separate features and different availability, different conditions. So those three Arctic Ocean shipping routes currently identified are the Northwest Passage, the Northern Sea Route, also known as Northeast Passage in contrast to the Northwest Passage, and also the Transpolar Route. And they're all pictured here on this map. So Northwest Passage first, here, this is the route, and it connects Baffin Bay with the Bering Strait. And actually the route is used, although it is not economically significant at the moment. Northern Sea Route, also known as Northeast Passage here. It's a sea route which is administered by the Russian Federation, and also it's connecting the Bering Strait with the Kara Gates. And this Northern Sea Route represents, it's not actually the same thing as Northeast Passage, it represents a bigger part of Northeast Passage. It is regularly used. And also the Russian Federation has some big plans to expand its use. And also here in the middle we have Transpolar Route, a route from Fram Strait to Bering Strait through the North Pole. It is more or less theoretical at the moment, at least, but some countries, like for example China, make some attempts to utilize it and make it economically significant in the near future. So let's start with Northwest Passage. So we had this, the first successful use on exploration of Northwest Passage was the expedition led by Roald Amundsen in his specific boat, Gja. Here it is in the, I think it is still available for visitors of a museum. So it's what is a polar ship, even though it doesn't look very robust, or it doesn't look like, it's definitely not an icebreaker. So it was a success. Earlier, there was a very famous expedition by John Franklin in 19th century, but it wasn't successful. And actually, it was missing for many, many years, and it led to following 40 expeditions who attempted to find, maybe they were not actually rescue missions, because it was very improbable, at least with time, that anyone from the Franklin expedition would survive, but they were missions trying to follow Franklin's route and find out what would happen to the expedition and find the remains of the expedition. So there is also northern sea route, like I said. This one was fully crossed earlier than the Northwest Passage, so it was successfully crossed at the end of 19th century, and it was a Swedish expedition. And there was also this transpolar route. Like I said, it's the shortest one, but it goes through the North Pole, so for now at least, it's only navigable by some heavy icebreakers, so go out and stand a chance trying to cross the transpolar route. But actually, with the decline of the sea ice extent in the Arctic Ocean, it is more and more probable that it will be not only available, but also emerge as a predominant shipping route. Not in the very far future. It is predicted it might happen by 2030. And like I said, Northwest Passage, the one, I think it's the best known, even though it's not most used. The most used is the one that is more that is used by the Russian Federation, and it's controlled by Russian Federation. But I guess that also historically Northwest Passage is the best known. And like I said, it is used, but not significant from the, not economically significant. So this is data until 2018. So until 2018, only 279 ships are recorded, to cross it successfully, to have crossed it successfully. And most of them were actually yachts. So as you can see, more and more yachts were crossing it. So on one hand, they're quite not as robust as icebreakers, but also they're not that heavy, so they're easy to navigate, but they do not have this significance that could lead to major shift in transport, because what we are mostly looking for are, maybe not we are, but especially China or Russia and United States are searching for new convenient routes that would be available for cargo ships, also passenger ships, but mostly cargo ships, because companies are looking, countries and companies, governments are looking for new ways to make them more available, and also economically available, and allowing for them to provide goods, transport of goods, and that would be actually quite cheap and would increase their income. So the problem, or not a problem, that depends on a point of view, is of course the ice, the sea ice that is covering the Arctic Ocean. In some parts all year round, in some parts only during some seasons, but in general Arctic Ocean is, and actually is supposed to be covered with ice. Supposed to be, meaning that this is the climate conditions that we are used to, and any major shifts, any conditions that lead to the surface of the sea ice shrinking, or the volume of sea ice shrinking, mean that our climate balance is disrupted. So what we see here are annual changes in sea ice volume, and it was prepared by this model. The sea ice volume is prepared by Pan-Arctic Ice Ocean Modeling and Assimilation System, using its data. So what we see here is a clear minimum in September and a clear maximum of sea ice volume in March or April, March-April. And so we would say that if there is a minimum in September, it's most convenient to cross the routes in September, and least convenient, or even least doable to do it in March or April. But as Arctic's sea ice melts, the sea routes might and will stay navigable for longer periods than only this period here, the minimum that we observe here. And definitely we can see that it is getting warmer, so there is a high chance that the sea ice extent in the Arctic will decrease significantly. So this is also a representation of this time of northern hemisphere mean temperatures, starting from year like 10th century and or 11th century actually, to present. By present here we mean 2000, 2001, and data from IPCC. Well, not data collected by IPCC, but data from IPCC. And what we observe here is in the last 100 years, the mean temperatures in Northern Hemisphere do actually increase significantly. Of course, this is, we can observe a trend, a linear trend. We have some instrumental data, but only starting like here, and past data comes from reconstructions or paleoclimatological data. So the Arctic sea ice extent is changing, and as you can see, the rate of change is quite high. It's more than 13% per decade. If we compare average September minimum extent year by year. So in last September, last minimum was reached on September 16th, 2021, and the sea ice in the Arctic Ocean, the surface of the sea ice was less than 5 million square kilometers, 4.72 million square kilometers. It was not the record minimum. The record minimum ever was reached earlier in 2012, so there is a little bit of rebound, but still the trend remains visible. So the Arctic sea ice extent has declined. It has declined in all months, but this minimum period, the September minimum extent, is showing the largest declines. So, and last 15 Septembers show the lowest values ever. Like I said, 2012 was a record minimum. So that was what we observed from the past. And what is the prognosis? What are the current predictions? So the current predictions are it will probably shift from constant or perennial to seasonal cover. It's still in some areas it's sort of seasonal, but so first the surface will decrease. Also, the period in which the sea is covered with ice will also get shorter and shorter. So the cover will be only seasonal. And also the volume will decrease because the ice will be thinning as the Arctic warms. So these are some models. Of course, models are burdened with lots of uncertainty. Sorry, and we can compare what we can check what happened in the past, but will this, for example, this area here shows the predicted sea ice extent in the year 2100. So it shows like very shrinking area of ice cover. And why is the Arctic, or why is maritime transport in the Arctic an area of interest for such countries as Russia or China that I mentioned earlier? So it's a political theater. It's been for a long time, and it hasn't started with Donald Trump offering to buy Greenland from Denmark. Actually, it wasn't a very new idea. I believe he offered that at, I don't know, 2016 or 17, something like that. Well, during his presidency. It was heavily laughed at, but actually it wasn't a very new idea, and it wouldn't be the first time that the United States would bought a large area, remember Alaska, and an Arctic or subarctic area as well. And also the Greenland has always been zone of influence of the US, zone of influence, and a very significant point on the map also during World War II, for example. So the Arctic in general is and still remains a strategic area, first for natural resources, but we do know for sure that the Arctic is very rich in natural resources, fossil fuels, and not only fossil fuels, but also the other mineral resources, very valuable ones. But for now, they are not. They may not be. It might not be as profitable to explore them as it might be in the near future with changing climate, for example, and with changing prices as well. So it remains a strategic area for resources exploration, but also once we use and are able to dig out those natural resources, then we have to transport them somehow to other areas. That means that those maritime routes are becoming very important. Also, you have to deliver some heavy machinery in the area or people. So the transport is crucial, and for now is one of the barriers of more dynamic development of this activity. So 8 countries in total lay claim to land that lies within the Arctic Circle. So it's Canada, it's Denmark, through its administration of Greenland. So Denmark is a rather small country, but thanks to administration of Greenland, is a significant player as well. Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, of course, Sweden, and the United States. So they lay claim to land that lies within the Arctic Circle. And there is actually no consistent agreement among these countries, among these nations, regarding those claims, the claims to oil and gas beneath the Arctic Ocean seafloor. So there is a United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea that provides each country an exclusive economic zone. And this exclusive economic zone is extending 200 miles out from its shoreline, up to 350 miles under certain geological conditions. But there's a lot of unknown, uncertain geology, and like I said, political theater has led to overlapping territorial disputes over how each nation defines, how each nation maps its claims, based, for example, on the edge of continental margins. It might seem that we now have a map. We're no longer in the times of Mercator, who did not know what was out there north and could imagine whatever he wanted. But now, even though we have more certain measurements, records, and maps, that still some countries are somehow able to have different vision and different claim, and therefore different claims. For example, Russia claims that their continental margin follows the Lomonosov Ridge here, all the way to the North Pole here. So another vision, both the US and Canada claim that that a portion of the Beaufort Sea belongs to them. I mean, belongs, meaning that they are allowed to explore it economically. And this portion of Beaufort Sea actually is thought to contain significant oil and natural gas resources. So it is very interesting from their point of view. So for now, it is not settled which country may claim which part, and it's also a little bit of gray area, and also a power struggle. Sometimes, Russia puts their flag, Russian vessel puts their flag somewhere, to claim that belongs to them. Sometimes it's also China entering the game, mostly based on contacts with Iceland, and trying to have their gateway to Arctic resources and Arctic transport as well via Iceland. So for now, nothing is really nearly certain about that. But it is certain that it will be an area of sort of a conflict, most hopefully not a military conflict, but a sort of conflict between countries, between nations. So again, why bother? Why is it important to follow those changes in maritime Arctic routes and their availability? First of all, once natural resources in the area are explored, there will be an increasing and growing need of transport. And also, even without this natural resources exploration, like I said, now, as a couple of hundreds years ago, we are always in search of shorter, faster, better, safer, cheaper routes of transport. So as you can see here, this is a traditional route from San Francisco to Rotterdam via Panama Canal, and here from Rotterdam, of course, both ways to Shanghai and Yokohama, so very significant logistic centers, you might say, via Suez Canal, which are, as you may have seen on the news, there are some problems with their capacity, and when there is a problem in Suez Canal, everyone has a problem with delivering goods. And so if you compare those routes with those traditional routes with possible routes via Arctic Ocean, well, the new routes would be definitely shorter. And shorter means a lot shorter, really. If we compare those, NM means nautical miles. So the miles in which we calculate distance in maritime transport. So the differences are very, very significant. Here, with Northwest Passage or even Northeast Passage, it's much shorter, but also, if shorter, it means cheaper. It means that we use less fuel. Well, that seems like a good thing, right? So here's some comparison of distances, and in general, like as you see, even the Northeast Passage now actually used is significantly shorter. So if the routes are open, what does it mean? So there are some desired effects, like from the point of view of customers or also companies. Well, when it takes shorter to deliver goods, it means that the goods are cheaper or can be cheaper, or the income is higher, depending on the policy. But that also means that less fuel is consumed. And if less fuel is consumed by the vessels, by cargo ships, that means less carbon dioxide emission. That seems like a good thing from the point of view of climate change. But on the other hand, this would probably lead to more intense shipping if the routes were available. So the effect of decreasing of the carbon dioxide emissions would disappear rather fast. So with more vessels, the CO2 emissions would definitely increase. So not so much of a good effect for the climate. Also, new threats would appear. Threats for Arctic marine mammals that would be endangered by those large vessels and collisions with those vessels. Also, oil spills that we know that do happen in those areas would create a lot of environmental threat for the ecosystem. Also, vessels carry organisms, right? They because of ballast waters. Ballast waters are carried, sucked in one part of the planet and then deposited in another part of the planet and carry a lot of organisms. Some wouldn't probably survive because of difference of conditions of temperature, salinity, etc. But some might, and that would also cause some threat of invasive species threatening local Arctic ecosystems, which are fragile enough. So oil spills, danger to Arctic marine mammals. Also, with more emission, there would be more soot, so more black carbon covering sea ice and snow and land. So with that, it would mean that the albedo would decrease, so less energy, less solar energy would be reflected back to the universe. So that would also contribute to climate change, to further increase in temperature. So these are some of the prognosis. What would how much the black carbon, so soot deposition, would increase with different scenarios. So this is actually depicting the share of soot emissions from Arctic shipping vessels, which is in 2004 here, but here we have models, like assumptions for 2050 with different scenarios of shipping development. This is the assumption is very intense shipping development, and this is less intense, like a moderate shipping development. So more polluting fuels, more pollution in general, and more soot would definitely, like I said, have negative impact on Arctic environment. And more soot, more black carbon means lower albedo. So this effect that will be another example of positive feedback loop, because climate change caused most likely and most significantly at the moment by our human anthropogenic industrial activity, including transport, leads to increased availability of maritime transport shipping routes in the Arctic. And more transport there would actually double down, so it would increase that effect. So that was, like I said, another example of positive feedback loop, like many other positive feedback loops in the climate change and those complicated, fragile, and not completely controlled relationship between our activity and climate. So that's it for today. Thank you.
Watch other recordings from webinars on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/EDU-ARCTIC. EDU-ARCTIC 2. From polar research to scientific passion, innovative nature education in Poland and Norway receives a grant of 240,000 euros received from Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway under EEA funds.